Facebook right now, and we're broadcasting now. So we're just gonna wait till everyone gets in. So I like the beard.
Yeah, it's getting serious, bro.
Yeah, I really need a haircut right now. So how do you like
We
it?
all do. We all do. Look at this, getting long.
Yeah.
I haven't had a haircut or shaved since they said the word pandemic. I'm like, all right, that's it.
We got the playoff beard coming in. So we have about 33 people in right now, and we're just getting ready to go live. We'll give it a couple minutes. So are you working from home right now? Are you?
Isn't everybody?
Well,
I hope
you know
so.
what? I'm hearing some people in production are still doing a lot of stuff as well, and they're still like doing a lot of planning and a lot of Zoom meetings and things like that right now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it is full speed ahead. I'm doing 8-hour days right now, mostly through Zoom and
Yeah.
through phone calls and webinars and, other platforms. I'm doing a media tour right now for the new show, which is launching in 2 weeks. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. And normally at this time of year, when we're launching a show, I'd be going into, do the Marilyn Dennis show and to do the morning shows and all the news broadcasts. But now everything's being called in. It's almost harder because you're just sitting at home and it's like, what the heck?
Yeah. All right. So we got enough people in. So welcome everyone. Really appreciate your time. We have Scott, my good friend, investor superstar. Everyone knows him, so I don't really have to go into in depth. I really wanted to start going into a lot of questions because I know we don't have a lot of time. We have less than an hour. This is a really interesting market right now. Toronto, the real estate market was on fire and it's slowed down a lot. We were getting maybe 900 appointment bookings at our brokerage. Now we're getting about 100 a day. So it's gone down from 900 to 100 a day.
Yeah.
Real estate agents are not supposed to be actively showing, but we are an essential service. But the amount of showings have gone down. The appetite to look is still kind of there, where I'm getting a lot of people reaching out to me, but it's more of, hey, when's this market bottoming out, and what should I do? When can I start looking for opportunities? What's your thoughts on things and how you see things happening, and is it going to recover quick in your mind?
Yeah, all good questions. Not surprised that we're seeing a massive drop in activity. Everything, in our economy right now is running at about 20%. That seems to be consistent, whether it's my production, we're down, 80% of everything's shut down. Whether it's showings, agents are telling us everywhere that listings are down about 80%, showings are down about 80%. There's only a few places where traffic is up, and unless you're a grocery store or like a medical supply store of some sort. Otherwise, the rest of the economy is pretty slow. But there's a lot of uneducated and kind of tire kicker folks out there in the real estate space saying, hey, where are the deals? So you show me the deals, as if like magically stuff hits the market immediately. That would be a pretty unsophisticated approach to being a real estate investor. I think, I'm going to give you the top 3 things that you need to be doing right now. And then to answer your question directly, talk about the fact that it's not, we're not seeing the actual results of the pandemic translate to real estate prices yet, because it's too soon. As we all know, real estate is typically slower to react than the stock market. Like, you can see a sell-off on the stock market like that. And it's not to say it can't happen in real estate. It's just not common. A drop-off usually takes time. And even though traffic is down, listings are down, prices really haven't changed. What we've seen hitting the market is still selling pretty close to what it was selling for before. There might be a 5 to 10% variance depending property to property. I would say we don't even have enough information yet to make good deductions of what's actually happened in the last 3 weeks. But the truth is, the the government has now put in a mortgage deferral program, which is not a mortgage forgiveness program. That's number one thing people need to recognize is this isn't interest forgiveness or mortgage forgiveness. This is basically saying that we'll defer it, which means you're still going to have to pay it later, which means you're actually worse off using the deferral if you're just using it at a convenience. It's meant to be there for someone who actually cannot afford to make that mortgage payment. It would be a decision between food or mortgage at this point. Then use the deferral and know that this isn't 6 months to sit around and take advantage of it. This is 6 months countdown to get your act together or apply for whatever other benefits you qualify for in order to start getting yourself back on track once the new normal has set in.
Yeah. Do you see? I guess the question is, we don't really have to answer the question. We don't have all the information, but what's your gut feel on how long this is going to take and how investors and buyers should proceed? And for that matter, sellers.
Yeah, it's not, sellers, if you need to sell, then sell. I think that since there is such low inventory, there's still more demand than there is inventory. Inventory might be down 80%, but demand is probably down 50%. So you're still all right. I don't know about you personally on the East End there, Brian, what you're seeing in terms of demand, but from the network of agents that I deal with across North America, they still have clients who want to see inventory. Are you seeing that?
I definitely am. I'm actually doing showings right now as well. The way that I'm doing it is that wearing a mask, Lysol, tons of Lysol, hand sanitizer. I go in, I let them in, I take my notes, I go through, I go out through the back door. They come in and we're on a cell phone together and they're just telling me what they see and I'm asking any questions or telling them what to look out for on particular properties. These are all vacant properties, by the way. Me personally, I'm seeing my clients, they're denying about 10% of the listing, 10% of the showing. So it's really a lot of sellers and tenants not really allowing the showings. Some people have asked their places to be taken off the market completely because they don't want the days on market to start creeping up. But one thing that I am seeing that's interesting, and I want to see your thoughts, and I'm going to do a screen share right now, is that I'm seeing some buyers being strategic and like buying stuff. So let me just pull up here. I wanted to show you this. So this condo sold for $640,000 in February. Now
640, yeah.
And then this one, the same size, sold for 554. So you know how you could actually, this is not the right one, but so we are seeing, so this one's actually a lot smaller. That sold for 640. I pulled up the wrong comp there, but 640, this one a lot
Ryan.
bigger, sold for 554. So I am still seeing like people taking low ball offers. These are panicking sellers. And the story behind this one in particular is that they took the first call and it was a low ball offer and they just took it.
And like a bully offer. Bully offers, they work in any market conditions. Sometimes people are willing to accept them. I'd say that this is the exception more than the rule at the moment. And look at, you have to decide what type of investor you are and what you'd like to be doing. My personal suggestion is follow the government regulations when it comes to social distancing. Like people who are out looking at a million listings, racing around as if, this is a time to be looting for real estate. It's just, that's not where my appetite is. And I feel like those are the people who are the riskiest of risk takers. And you might save 10 grand on a property or 20 grand on a property, but if you end up in the hospital on a ventilator, I'm sure none of that's going to matter. So watch out, be smart, take care of your health first. Don't go looking at a million listings just for fun or just trying to be opportunistic. If you have to buy a house because you've already sold and you're moving, then do it carefully. And you might be able to catch a break. Or you can do remote viewings. I do most of my remote viewings. I'm willing to put in an offer without going to physically see a place. I'll just have some certain conditions. And right now my conditions are long enough that I can get somebody in there at some point safely. But for me right now, the smart investors, this isn't over. The smart investors know that it's going to get worse before it gets better, and that with the emergency funding products that are in place by the government, nobody really has to sell right now because they can defer mortgage payments for 6 months and then make a decision. It's kind of like when a new building is going up. It's going up, it's being built. Nobody's really trying to offload their contracts, the odd person, but it's when occupancy and ownership kick in, all of a sudden there's, a ton of condos go for sale as soon as the building is done. Typically we see that, people trying to offload them who are just in them as investments. Well, the same thing is going to happen once these mortgage deferral programs run out. That's when we're going to really know who's in a situation where they're struggling. And that's when I think we're going to see a lot of inventory hitting the market, is probably the end of the summer. You're going to start seeing that inventory coming back. People who have been waiting, because who really wants to have an open house right now, and the people who can hold on for 6 months because their mortgage has been deferred. But in a few months from now, we're really going to see where this lands. Remember in 2008, if you bought in 2008 and 2009, you actually lost money for another 2 or 3 years in equity, because the lowest point in the real estate cycle of the US market crash in 2008 wasn't until about 2010, 2011. It was 3 years later that the final deals were to be had, and that you actually see the bottom of the market. So you really do want to be in a situation now where you're preparing, not purchasing, but preparing. Preparing means looking at your finances, looking at securing lines of credit, look at getting better interest rates. Like right now, the best way to make money is to reformat your debt and start taking advantage of some of the low interest rates that are out there.
Interesting. I remember in 2008 when in Toronto, I was trying to time the market. I was waiting for condos to go down to 300 per square foot. I found that timing, it never hit that mark in this particular area that I'm looking at. And I find that timing the market is really, really difficult. But in essence, you're saying to just get your ducks in a row and wait until summer, because that's when all this deferrals and stimulus packages might end. And you expect us to still be in a slowdown mode up until then.
Well, this is a real economic issue. Canada hasn't had a real recession, or at least Toronto, which is the market we're talking about here specifically. It's been a boom market for almost 25 years. There hasn't been any major slowdowns. There's been a couple leveling offs, but we haven't had any super corrections, let's call it. This is a correction. Like, this is real unemployment that is happening. This is real economic losses. Like, this is an unfortunate scenario. But if you weren't in the real estate market 25 years ago, you haven't lived through one of these scenarios, and you don't know how difficult it can be. The 80s and 90s were not kind to people who were over leveraged. Interest rates got out of hand, and folks lost properties, and those lasted for years and years. It wasn't like prices dropped overnight and then started recovering right away. It took a while for it to bottom out, and then it stayed there for a while. So this is really, you want to insulate yourself right now. You want to put yourself in a position where for instance, for myself, with all my rental properties, what am I doing right now? Communicating with my tenants, making sure that everybody's safe, making sure that everybody's in good shape, letting them know that I'm not taking advantage of any of the deferral programs, because it'll actually put me in a worse financial situation. I'm urging, provincial governments to put in place some rental supplement programs, and some of them have already, right? So there needs to be some assistance for renters to help them with their rental payments, so that landlords can continue with their mortgage payments. That's really how the rental landlord relationship needs to be supported by the government, and they'll get there. I am confident that in the next 20 days or so, we're going to see more support in that department. But for me, the other big thing for me this week has been I pulled out all of my debt statements, right? I just did my taxes. So I have my annual mortgage statements and all my line of credit statements here. And I'm looking at my interest rates. I'm looking at my penalties. I'm looking at when my mortgages are up for renewal. I'm looking at the maximum down payment I can put, which is about 20% on a lot of them. And there's some situations where I'll put 20% down now, then I'll break the mortgage a couple weeks later because I'm reducing my penalty by 20% by doing that. And I'll roll it into a new credit facility at an interest rate of like 1.8%. So I'm looking at ways that I'm going to be saving hundreds of dollars a month on each one of my loans now. That's what you should be doing right now, is start learning how you can save on all of the debt that you have and getting yourself in a better cash position for a few months from now when the numbers really work. Just because you save 10 grand on a property or even 100 grand, like you might buy a condo today for 100 grand less than it sold a year ago. But who cares if you can't rent it out? It's still a dumb idea. Like, it doesn't mean that it's actually worth 100 more. It's only worth what you paid for it today. And tomorrow it might be worth 100 less than that. So don't, like, these panic buyers and these people who think that they're going to gamble with the market and I'm going to take advantage of this while it's happening. That's those people. I'll be buying those properties from those people at a discount in 6 months from now.
Interesting. I got a question here, and we opened up the forum for questions right now.
Right.
Let's see. I'm trying to buy a property. My dad is not an end user. When is a good time to property, and if so, what? So we already talked about the when. What? Should she buy a condo as an assignment, a resale, pre-construction, freehold, a house, townhouse, or semi? I mean, how do you even go about answering that for people that are part of your investor network? How should they invest, or what should they invest into?
Well, the irony, and I'm always looking for the silver lining. You know that I am like a diehard optimist when it comes to these things. So there are real problems, and everybody, I'm trying to support people where I can to help them address issues they're having with tenants and issues they're having with servicing their debt. Those are real problems, and we need to run triage, but also be planning for the future, which means, if you look at a time like this, for the last 10 years, the biggest struggle that has come across my radar is first-time home buyers trying to get into the real estate market. Millennials have said to me for 10 years, I'll never be able to buy a home because the prices are just crazy and it's too competitive.
And I love what you tell them.
Yeah.
Listen, because I know what you're going to say. Yeah.
What am I going to say?
Go the income property route, 5% down it, and rent out part of it.
That's been the big solution, is why don't you stop thinking about buying a whole house for yourself and buying an investment property as your primary residence? Because when I bought my first house 21 years ago, it was the hardest time ever to be a first-time home buyer, same as it has been now. But I got news for you. This could be an opportunity for those who have been priced out of the market to maybe acquire a primary residence. This is the next few months might be a good time to start looking for a primary residence that has rental income potential in an income suite, because we are believing that prices are going to correct in some capacity. So this is, and in order to qualify for your first home, you want to make sure that your credit's intact and you've got a few months to do a little bit of credit repair and building that up. You want to be saving up for a down payment, which hopefully you've already started doing, or looking at ways to get yourself ready to be able to purchase a property in a time like this. Because if prices do come down 20%, which is probably not unreasonable in the next 16 months, that's a gift. That's a gift to people who haven't been able to afford it in the past, as long as they still have employment and other things that allow them to qualify, right?
Yeah, I actually have this, and this is we did an episode together of income property in this neighborhood, Southeast Ajax, Bailey and that area.
Yeah.
So this is actual property that I saw. Mind you, I just did a quick and dirty on it. I didn't really take a look at it. But
to win, okay.
Yeah, we got the 4 ways to win. And the reason why I thought it was interesting is because look what price they were selling for This was back in like February and March. So this one sold in early March for 631. This one sold for 620 back in early March. And look what this one sold for. The exact same style of house sold for 495.
Wow.
And the rents that you get on it, you know, you're getting about 1650 for the upstairs, 1250. That's what the rents were in the area. Taxes 4,000 in. I plug in 2.5% on the mortgage. You're cash flowing $285 a month if you were to leave it. But let's say you live in the upstairs or you live in the basement, you're going to be cheaper than renting. And then if you go 5% down, let's see what would, and this is something that all your members get, so they'll be able to help analyze the numbers. So this is with a 5% down payment. They're into it for 40 grand and they're getting a property that if they were going to leave it, they would cash flow about $300 a month. And it's gone down quite a bit from what it was the earlier part of the month. So it'd be a good time to maybe start getting your ducks in a row. Going back to fixing your debt stuff, and the way you were talking about was really complicated. Whenever you go 20% down, you buy it, and then
Okay, I'll explain. There's a couple things. So there's a few things. Number one, if you have a mortgage coming up for renewal anytime soon, you really want to pay attention and start talking about some of the new interest rates that might be available. Variable rate products, if you're already in a variable rate product, you're automatically you're doing well, because when rates drop, typically your rate will drop with it. So those who are in variable rates are laughing for the most part, because they're prime minus, and prime is down to 2.45 or whatever it is today. Changes almost daily. And now there are some new loans that are coming available, some for businesses, some for individuals, that have really good interest rates on them. And what I'm saying is, if you're stuck in a 5-year mortgage or a 4-year mortgage, and you have a penalty that you're going to have to pay to break it, well, that penalty can be pretty expensive, and it's based on the principal balance that's remaining typically. So what I've done in the past is, because most mortgages allow you to do a lump sum payment of up to 20% in any calendar year, what you would typically do is, like, let's say you had a $500,000 mortgage. Well, you might be allowed without a penalty to put $100,000 down on that mortgage. So your mortgage goes down to $400,000. And then if you break the mortgage a week later or a month later, you're breaking a mortgage at the $400,000 price point, not at the 500. So you have a 20% savings on the penalty. And so you do your math on what's the penalty going to be versus how much am I going to save over the next 3 to 5 years on the new interest rate. And you make sure that you're saving. In a lot of cases, you'll be saving $5, $10, or $15,000 more in the upcoming years by taking advantage of that.
Yeah. We have a question here, and I wanted to go back, sorry, before I go to the question. It sounds like, should you go to your own bank for that, or should you be working with a broker that looks at multiple banks? Or how should you start going through that process?
Yeah, you're going to want to talk to the institution that you're already with. You know, depending on how much banking you do with them, you may have more flexibility. You may be able to blend and extend, or roll a mortgage over, or renew a mortgage early. I mean, it doesn't hurt to have the phone call. If you got your mortgage document, you call them up and say, hey, I'm looking at my mortgage. It's coming up in 8 months. I'm really looking at what I can do now in order to get renewed and do an early renewal. What are the best rates you can offer? And for some projects and properties, you can, for some mortgages, you can do an early renewal and start taking advantage of that right away.
Okay, excellent. So talk to your lender, see if you can get some line of credits and stuff, so you can pull out extra down payment money if you need to, or if you have extra cash around.
A line of credit's best because it's, if you get it, you have it available, but you're not using it and servicing the debt until you need it, right? Just getting another mortgage, the challenge with another mortgage right now is that, or extending your mortgage to tap into more equity, is that you have to start servicing that debt right away.
So we got two questions that came up that are very similar. Anonymous wrote how the COVID-19 impact on the assignment market. people are more nervous about the uncertainty of construction delays, liquidity issues, and then we have someone asking very similarly, what do you see with the pre-con assignment market? Are people going to be selling instead of losing more money in a year or two when this stuff gets cleared off? What's your thoughts on pre-construction and selling assignments right now, or buying assignments?
Right. Well, you know, my take on predicting the future of real estate is I usually give you an answer that ensures that I'm always correct, which is anyone who knows what's going to happen in real estate is a liar until it happens. I have a clip. I have a clip of me on stage, you know, 2 or 3 months ago in Toronto while I was doing the wealth tour here with thousands of people, and people are like, "What's going to happen in the real estate market?" And I said, anyone who tells you what they know is going to happen in the real estate market is a damn liar, because it has a lot less to do with economics, and it has a lot more to do with politics, pandemics, and wars than it has to do with how the market's doing. So I was laughing at that because I said that in January because I had just watched something about this happening in China, which nobody thought it was coming to North America. And everyone's telling me, like, what are interest rates going to do to the market in 5 years? And I'm like, there's more chance of everything being disrupted by a pandemic that's just sparked in China than anything else right now. And nobody could have predicted that a month ago. So stop worrying about that and look at what the numbers are saying today. So here we are, right? 3 months after I gave that speech, and it's 100% out of left field. We all got sucker punched. The whole real estate market, the whole economy got sucker punched by something that 5 months ago, nobody on earth could have forecast this situation. So instead of worrying about what's going to happen in 2 years or 5 years, because there are some projections that can be done, but all that gets thrown right out the window when things change. This could go away as fast as it showed up. In 6 months, there could be a vaccine and didn't matter. Or this could roll on for years and have different waves. We don't know what is going to happen. So the only thing you can be sure of is what's occurring today, and make sure that the numbers work. If the math is still working, then take the opportunity now. If your property is rented, like, I'm not selling anything right now because my tenants aren't going anywhere today. My rent's not going up, but it's not going down. The thing that I can control is the cost of servicing my debt, which is going down. So there's going to be more room for profit there. But if you've got, I'm not a huge fan of investing in, projects that are 4 or 5 years out, because it's gambling. And now we're going to see everybody who did not take my advice on buying something that has instant opportunity instead of speculating. All of those people are going to come and say, well, now what should I do, since I didn't listen to you before and I went ahead and bought something that won't be ready for 3 or 4 years? Yeah. What should I do about it? And the truth is, there's not much you can do. You can drop out of the contract and lose your down payment, which is not a good idea. You can try to assign the contract if you have an assignment clause in your deal, which would allow you to pass it on to somebody else. But chances of making money on an assignment clause right now are next to nothing. Or you can wait this out, because chances are that if the property is supposed to come available in 2 years, that's probably going to be delayed as well. So, because most construction is working at a snail's pace if it's being done at all right now. So you can imagine a 6 month to 1 year delay on all your pre-construction development projects now as well.
Yeah, so on the assignment market, I'm getting a lot of vultures reaching out. It's probably not the time to try to sell an assignment, because here's the crazy thing is, when you're buying an assignment, you have to replace your deposit, which is 20% down, plus your profit difference. So you have to get a buyer that's putting in a couple $100,000. It is not the time to look to assign. Maybe if you're looking to buy and you have a lot of cash and you really want to be someplace, then it might be looking. What you said about pre-construction is actually really interesting, because in the news, Crestford is going through bankruptcy protection. Basically, what's going to happen is that all the contracts are going to be canceled and everyone's going to get their deposits returned. But the crazy thing is, Scott, some of these people bought it for 800 per square foot, and now they're selling for $1,700 per square foot today. So the opportunity cost that their money had in that project is gone. And it was a big builder, a good builder, a builder that's been around for years. And if you weren't in the industry and didn't hear the rumors going back to how they operated for a few years, you would not have known. So the way that I kind of hedge my bets for pre-construction is that obviously you go with a really good brand name builder, but also see if they have their working drawings in place so they could start construction almost immediately. Because if they don't lock in those contracts, any builder that has their costs go up $50 to $60 million is going to probably cancel the project, because that's essentially their margin. I mean, what do you see on pre-construction? What's the typical margins that builders get?
Well, they've been very healthy for the last few years.
Yeah,
For
because
the
land
last,
prices that they bought it for.
yeah, they basically they were getting away with like massive, that I was involved with some capital raises, which is a little different than getting into pre-construction. Working with the developer and doing capital raise with a developer is different than buying a pre-construction condo. I'm not going to get into that right now, but the margins were, I've done some development myself as well for the last few years. We've developed several projects, and the margins have been fantastic because everything has outperformed best case scenario. So, even fools were making money for the last several years. And a time like this is going to weed out the unprofessionals and the people who have, been making money, dare I say, almost by mistake. And it's going to put the pressure on the best developers and to continue developing, but it's going to squeeze their margins for sure. I remember in 2008 when everything went belly up, there were some huge developers in the US who were still building brand new neighborhoods. I remember Lennar is one of the ones I was looking at all these properties in 2009, 2010, nothing was selling. And these developers were building. And I went in and I'm like the only person in the sales office and talking to the lady in there. I'm like, what is going on? You guys are a huge site here and you guys are building like thousands of homes.
So they're building on spec.
And well, no, she was like, look it's either we stop building and go out of business, or we try to run at a break even and keep people employed and keep the business running and cover our expenses. Like we're basically building at almost a loss or zero profit, just to keep the company going for a few years. And it was true. The prices on the properties were insane. That's when I bought a bunch of properties in the States. And that was 2010 and 11 was probably the sweet spot. So the crisis hit in 08. It wasn't for 2 or 3 years that everything calmed down. The problems became realities and the speculators were out of the way and some of the best opportunities were there. And by the time, you got in 2011, you were right at the beginning of the recovery, right? You kind of gotten past the worst of it.
Yeah, we got a couple more questions, and they're kind of similar. We have Wanda and Diana both asking similar questions. Wanda asks, I want to downsize in 12 months. Any suggestions on financing the necessary rentals to prep the property for sale? And do you suggest waiting 16 months? And Wanda asks, is it a good idea to take an extra $20,000 loan to do a renovation to upgrade a rental? We've had it for about 5 years. So they're kind of similar question. One's getting a prep to sell, one's sprucing it up.
Okay.
I think they're hard questions.
They are hard questions, but there's some pretty tried and tested strategies in different types of markets. So downsizing is a good way to make money in an increasing market. So from what I mean by that is if a market's going up in value and you want to be able to make some money off of your primary residence, buying something that's similar to the house that you're selling is a lateral move, and typically there's no profits to be made. However, if you have a big expensive house and you sell it and move into a small condo, you can actually recognize profits. So in an accelerating market or in a high market, downsizing is a good move. In a depreciating market, which is probably what we're more realistically going to be in now, is actually a better time to be upgrading, because if you're going to take a loss on a small property, it's typically going to be less than the loss that you'll be recognizing from purchasing a bigger property. Do you see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
if you sell a $100,000 property and it's down 20%, you lose 20 grand. But if you buy a $500,000 property that's also down by 20%, you gain 100 grand. So upgrading is the rule in a depreciating market of how to make money, not the opposite.
Yeah, so she might not want to, I guess, spend on renovations and things like that. We
On the
really want to wait and
renovation
see.
side, like, this is a really unique scenario. This has never happened like this that I've ever witnessed, where a market's going down in value, but add a layer of complication on top of that. Social distancing and a complete shutdown of non-essential services basically means you can't get a building permit for new construction right now. Like, if I wanted to start a massive project here, you can't even get a building permit. So why go through the hassle of trying to take on a renovation that isn't even allowed to be done right now, while your ROI on any value-added improvements
It's
is
uncertain.
also probably down and uncertain right now. Exactly. So the
Yeah.
recommendation to do any major renovations is don't do it. If you are going to do some work on a house, I was on a few shows this morning and people were asking about renovations. If you want to do stuff on your own house, do it, because you're home and there's probably not much else you can do. You know, this is a great time to paint. This is a great time to declutter and reorganize and to throw things out and to caulk all your baseboards and your windows and to change out your light bulbs to energy efficient light bulbs. Like, this is a time to be smart and frugal and savvy with the work that you're doing around the house, not a time to, say, what's a good idea is like a whole kitchen redo right now. Because do you want a bunch of people coming in and out of your house right now, and you don't know where they've been? Absolutely not.
Yeah, and I guess also what Diana should know is that we have to look at the comparables and how much money it's going to cost to renovate. And then when the market's more predictable, if you could spend $1 and make two, why not? But if it's uncertain, you spend $1, you're uncertain if you're going to make that dollar. You have to really look at the comparables. And specifically for Wanda, should she take an extra 20,000 to renovate an existing property? I don't know. I feel that you should maybe save up to get another one eventually, but I don't know. What's your thoughts on renovating your existing rentals?
I mean, right now there's a rent freeze basically, and a non-eviction in place. So the gains of doing a renovation right now are probably minimal. Again, I've been talking with my property managers a lot this week. We are not doing any non-essential renovations at the moment. It's not good. It's in bad form, and it's kind of tone deaf to be sending people into your rental properties while people are living there, your tenants. Nobody wants strangers coming through their house. Anything that was listed for sale, if we haven't already sold it, it's been taken off the market, because it's not the right thing to be holding an open house in a rental property where the tenants don't have the control necessarily of who's coming in and out. And so the same thing with the renovation. And typically my suggestion is you do a renovation, any major renovations on a rental property, between tenants, not necessarily while your tenants are there. You don't get the added benefit when they're there. You do the essentials and what's necessary, but because you can't raise the rents significantly, your ROI is fairly low to try to do a major renovation while someone is in the middle of an occupancy.
Agreed. So maybe specifically you should always look at the situation, but because maybe she can't get another property, but I'm almost like saying save up and see if you could get something when the prices go down versus renovating something that you have that you're not going to get as high of an ROI on it, in a nutshell. Okay, so we have another question here. So you were talking about talking to your tenants and making sure they're able to pay their rent. We're seeing some people taking advantage of the situation, asking for rent reductions, refusing to pay rents because they know the landlord tenant board is not in operation, there's no evictions. Who knows how long the backlogs in the system are going to go way through before all this happen. How do you deal with problem tenants right now?
Well, I mean, like I've said in the past, the number one creator of bad tenants is bad landlords. Right now is not like the time to put down the iron fist. This is a time to be compassionate. I have made sure that my property managers have communicated to all of my tenants that we are staying on top of the situation, and if we are aware of any funding that is available for them, we're sending them the information right away. We've already sent them all the links to anything they may qualify for if they've been let off of their jobs or anything like that. So we're basically trying to be a conduit of support for our tenants. You know, if somebody there has been a couple people that have asked, you know, do I have to pay my rent? And we've been clear to explain. I said, you never have to pay your rent, but unless you want to get into a situation where it becomes a real piece of work for both of us, the suggestion is to continue paying it, and we'll all work together to figure out what the solution is. You know, any tenant who's basically saying, oh, well, you can't evict me, so I'm not going to pay my rent, that might be a screening problem when you originally rented it to them rather than a situational problem. But the other thing, you know, I'm being very careful of is I have a lot of student rentals, and some of the students are, well, this is April. April is usually the last month for a lot of students. So they've already prepaid April's rent. So it's a non-issue for most of the tenants who have already paid their April's rent. What we have done is we've reached out to all of our students and said, we know a lot of you are moving out this year, and we know that the school year has been interrupted. We are offering to do a deep cleaning of the property before, if you are willing, you know, if you guys are able to come and get your things slightly early and give us 48 hours or more to clean the we'll take care of all the cleaning of the property and giving it time before the new tenants have to move in. So we're really just trying to assess the scenario. And we're also asking our tenants to coordinate with each other. So you move out on separate days, because sometimes you'll have 4 or 5 tenants living together with the students. And we're just telling them, why don't you guys all book different days so you're not all there at the same time. We're really just trying to help them get through this as much as we're all trying to get through this. And nobody knows exactly what's going to happen, but I know that no matter what happens, I can look back and say I did the right thing. And I've, you know, knock on wood, we haven't missed any April rent payments. And you know how many tenants I have across all my different investments.
Because you screen.
We do a ton of screening, absolutely. But some of it is also the fact that April is a unique month with 50% or more of my rentals being for students. They've already prepaid April, so it's not like we're collecting or cashing any checks for a lot of those people. Mm-hmm. But you know, we're halfway through April now, and looking forward to May. And again, we've put the olive branch out that anything we can do to help our tenants, we're willing to do it. And so far, so good. So for me, it's if I can get some savings on the financing side right now, I'm not necessarily saying you should pass that on to your tenants, but that any savings that I'm going to get is going to be put into like an emergency backup plan situation. So if I do have any rental payments missed, I'm hoping that the savings that I have will be enough to cover them there. But I'm not nervous right now. I'm obviously being vigilant with the situation. I don't think that there's anyone in our economy who's happy about what's happening. And I don't think that there's anyone who hasn't been affected in some way. And we just have to be there for each other. And everyone has to continue to do the right thing, because when this is all over, those who didn't do the right thing will be reprimanded. You know that, right? Yeah. So it's just like some of these emergency benefit plans. You can go online and apply for them and start getting them. And really, you don't have to show much, but do you need them? Right? You do. So, you know, you got to do the right thing. And and it'll all be equalized. The great equalizer will come, when this is done, and people will look back, and those who try to take advantage of this will pay for it, and those who were compassionate about it and did the right thing will probably be rewarded for it.
So I guess being compassionate, being understanding, but doing the right things. And that also means doing the paperwork properly, going through the process. There's nothing you could probably do to convince someone to pay the rent if they can't or they won't. So just do the paperwork properly. Communication where you documenting it and you can show the landlord tenant board, you're a great landlord. And the more documentation you have, the better. And they'll always side with the person who is doing the right things. A couple more questions because we're running out of time. Rental market. How are you seeing the rental market right now?
Rental market has been remarkably stable. Like I said before, I've never been in a situation where I've had to reduce rents, and I hope to never be there. We provide great service for our tenants, and something that we won't be doing is raising rents. There's no reason for me to be raising rents right now. There's no additional expenses for me as a landlord. If anything, I'm looking for ways of saving, like on the debt servicing, as I said before. And some of that money's already being put into my property managers planning on doing some massive deep cleanings on these properties between tenants. Like, we're spending a little bit of extra money, but it's not, I wouldn't say that there's any reason for us to increase rents. I would be happy if people just kept paying their rent and we kept it stable. It's better than losing money. Anyone who's been in the stock market and people who have been buying are probably losing on the value and losing in the stock market. But, nationally in Canada, we've never seen rental rates go down year over year. So this will be the real test of that. 65 years of data, and nationally rental rates in Canada have never gone down, which is really quite incredible. So this will really be the ultimate test. But I don't see any major reason for rental rates to come down today. But who knows? There's a first for everything.
Yeah, on a national level, I completely agree. Interesting thing is that we are seeing, and I'm going to show a slide here. A tweet from Gil Meslin. He's saying 16,000 Airbnbs were on the market on February 2020. Yeah. This does represent like a big chunk of supply. Now, I know that not all of these are going to be places that were ever on the long-term rental market. It could be some guy has a condo and he's in Cabo for a couple of weeks and he puts it up.
Yeah.
But that is a huge supply of potential rentals there, and they're going to be coming back on the rental market. And there are a lot of them are condos, so I do expect condo rentals the lease rates to go down, especially in a year where a lot of supply is being added. So we're getting a double whammy of Airbnb and a lot of supply. But just generally in the 905, I'm not really seeing rental rates being impacted. Basement apartments, I'm not really seeing basement apartments.
There's two different ways of looking at it. When I talk about annual rental rates, what I'm typically looking at is the average annual rental rate of a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment, because we have good data on that historically for about 65 to 70 years. Airbnb, we have literally like 3 to 5 years of data, and it's all over the map because there's almost no consistency. This guy's renting a bedroom and this guy's renting a whole house. It's not classified the same way. So Airbnb will be interesting to see what kind of impact this has. I'm launching my show, Scott's Vacation House Rules, in 2 weeks. And this is all about vacation rental properties, which at the moment, because I've reached out to some of the people that we've helped this summer, I said, how's it looking? And a couple things. Most of them already had them rented for the summer long before this happened. And a lot of their tenants are actually excited to be able to get a little social distancing from the city. And their main concern is when we arrive, will it be cleaned or will there have been somebody there right before us? So they are still seeing high demand for these vacation rental properties because Nobody's going to any hotels. Nobody's going to the Caribbean. Nobody's getting on any airplanes. Nobody's crossing the border. But you can believe me, but when this summer comes, people are going to want to get outside. They're going to want to enjoy the precious time we have with the good weather. And some of these vacation rental opportunities, my suggestion at the moment is to leave a certain amount of vacancy between occupancies, and make sure when you're if you are renting it, I do have some advice on it. If you're going up north to rent a cottage for a week, bring your groceries with you, so you're not putting pressure on the local markets there, who may not have enough supply for the local market that
So
exists.
leave it in the house type of thing, like groceries, like
well, like
eggs and
if you're like, let's say you're going to go and rent a cottage for a week this summer, bring
Oh,
all the
okay,
groceries
okay.
you need with
I
you
get it. Yeah,
from the city, so that you're not shopping when you're there.
yeah.
Make sure that there's a cleaning before you get there, and make sure that you only go with the people that you've been in isolation with, or small close family members, whatever is allowed at that point in time.
Yeah.
But that might be the only legit vacations that that people are going to have this summer, is because you can't really, what do you want to go to a busy hotel this summer, or do you want to get on an airplane? Probably not.
So you're expecting the Airbnb market for domestically in cottage country might be really great. I know we only have about a couple minutes, so I'm going to rapid fire through 5 outstanding questions.
Sure.
I own a rental property and self-employed income. I want to buy another one. It's difficult to get a mortgage. What could you do to get a mortgage as self-employed? Or
Yeah,
get a
so
rental
there are
property?
some
JV?
well, you can JV. There's lots of things you can do. Yeah, JV partnership, private financing. There are some government programs for self-employed individuals right now. Just to wrap up that thought of buying a rental property. Right now, long-term rentals are still working, and they're still considered viable. The short-term rental market is being impacted by the state of emergency, but we are looking. We're not thinking necessarily a lot of these vacation properties and short-term rentals that are getting high rental rates is in the summer months. So we are hoping that the government's new plan of easing back on things in late May or even June doesn't have a significant impact on the July and August market. But I mean, like I said, we're in our uncharted territory here. We don't know what's going to happen. But every day there's new programs. I think today they made new changes to who's eligible for some of these government programs. So, use them wisely, and use them appropriately, right?
Yeah, so we expect maybe some stimulus. There might be some self-employed stuff coming up. You might want
There
a
is some
JV, but
self-employed stuff that just came out today. So
I bought a condo and I want to buy a house in a few years. Your advice on moving forward? I think we already answered that. Just get your
yeah.
ducks in a row and look for opportunities upcoming. And then lenders are treating HELOCs completely different from now. It used to be able to do a BRRRR, buy, renovate, refinance, rent out, repeat. And this is fuel to Canada's economy. Do you anticipate this is going to be over, refinancing and pulling the money out?
Well, because I've been teaching this for years, and yeah, right now it's a challenge. The way that I've been teaching it is you buy it, you renovate it, you refinance it, and rent it all at the same time. Like, you don't wait years to do that. You do all of that right away, and then you hold. So if
Yeah.
you're already in a holding pattern, like 98% of my properties, I'm in that holding pattern. Yeah, I've got caught with 3 properties right now that I have that are in the construction phase of the BRRRR process. So I'll have to deal with across that bridge when I get there. But hopefully you've already done that. So you should already be set up for success. If you've already done it, you're fine. If you're trying to do it right now, I would say the next 2 to 3 months is not the time to be setting yourself up to do a BRRRR. As I said many times in this interview, this is the time to be getting yourself in a position when things do start to stabilize to be able to take advantage of opportunities that do exist. And that might be a few months. It could be half a year, though.
2 more questions because I know you got to go. I got a condo. I have it listed a month ago. It's getting good activity early, but there's no showings. should I drop the price to attract more buyers? Again, a timing question. You're
Yeah,
saying
if
to
you don't
hold
have
on,
to sell,
defer a
don't
month.
sell right now. If you don't have to, don't sell. That's my
Yeah.
advice.
And the last question before you go is, I have a student rental. What do you do with the property in the summer months?
I do 1 year leases on all my student rentals. So some people do rent 8 months. They'll do like a September to end of April type rental, and then you're stuck with the property subletting it or doing short-term rentals in the summer. All of my student rentals are 1 year leases, typically May 1st, and then a 1 year lease all the way around. That's the best way to do it. And if the students want to sublet, that is their legal right to sublet it in the summer. But I'm not interested in an 8 month lease unless I've acquired a property in the summer. I'll rent it out September 1st and I'll do an 8 month lease at a premium. And then I'll roll it into my May to May cycle from there.
And taking a step back, you're investing in markets where the vacancy rates are low enough. You could get away with that. If there's an area that's flooded with student rentals, you might not be able to do that. But you invest in good areas, you do your due diligence, you do the 4 ways to win and everything else that you teach. Scott, thanks so much. How do we find you? How do we get more sage advice and everything
Hey.
else?
Well, you know what? We'll be launching a show on April 26th, Sunday nights, 9 p.m. on HGTV, brand new show launching. So you can catch all my advice on the show, or you can follow me at Scott Mcgillivray on Instagram. That's where, or on my website, scottmcgillivray.com. That's where we provide all the updates and all the good stuff.
Appreciate it. And if you want to hear Scott speak, and I'm going to be there as well, we do the Keyspire events where you educate people fully on this stuff because it's a lot of in-depth information. If you want some more information on me, go to the Condo Insiders Club and we'll be able to help you out. Thanks so much, Scott. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian.
Have a good rest of your day. Take care, man.
Be safe. Talk to you soon.
You too. Bye-bye.